welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. This is Kendra. She's old. She's cranky. By the time you see this, she will be almost 15. So this is being filmed right after I did season 6. We're going to be going over season 7 of The Road to Avonlea. This is the final season. This is being filmed on April 8th. So one thing I forgot to mention in the last episode of the 6th season is at the very end, a phone call comes through for Felicity, and Sally Potts overhears it because she's the phone operator. That's kind of, once she listens in on everything, that's kind of the way phones worked back then, is you'd call a number, you're trying to get in touch with this person, it goes through different operators, and the operators are often on the line. So, Sally Potts overhears a phone call that the ship Gus had been on, went down with all hands off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina. So Felicity at first doesn't believe her, and Polley's like, I'm not gonna lie, not about something like this. So that is where the previous season ended, with Felicity basically believing that she has lost Gus. So now we're going to come here to season 7. As I said, believes she has lost Gus, considering Gus Pike is on the front of this disc, to get an idea that no, he's not dead. So the first disc, and I did watch this, Out of the Ashes, which is on this episode, basically it says, New Avonlea baker Stuart McRae helps Felicity turn the Lloyd estate into an orphanage. So what happens is Felicity's obviously very, very depressed. The new banker, Stephen McRae, is both boarding his horse and renting out a room at the King household. And Cicely's been taking care of his horse. Felicity is still very depressed. This man has taken over the bank, and he is very intrigued by Felicity. He is young. And essentially, whether the bank or it's the town, they have to deal with this Lloyd estate, which was an old grand home that's pretty much been left. And they eventually raise a committee to go check out the house. Felicity's part of it. Her and one of the other young women who's new to town go into the house, and they find a bunch of children who had run away from an orphanage. And essentially what had happened was their parents had died in a flu epidemic. There was no other family. They went to this orphanage. The orphanage was not nice to them. They wanted to separate them, and the oldest daughter had promised her mother that she would keep the family together. So they ran away. And so what ends up happening is, with the help of the town, after they are scolded by Olivia, by Felicity's Aunt Olivia, to help. Yeah, she guilt trips them when they start whining about turning it into a children's home, which is very, very funny, considering the Olivia King from the mousy, quiet Olivia King from the first episodes to now she's a mother, she's married to Jasper, she's been a businesswoman, and she's kind of fed up, and she just kind of screams at the town. It's like, how can you be whining about providing a home to orphans? So they fix it up, and they turn it into an orphan home for these children, and they're going to take in other kids. So now moving on to things that I kind of skimmed over here. So this is disc 2. Love may be blind, but the neighbors aren't, which is rumors spread that Felix kissed Izzy, and that Olivia and Jasper are getting divorced, which they're not. And I don't believe Felix and Izzy get together. Davy and the Mermaid, where Davy falls under the spell of a beautiful sideshow mermaid named Melusia. Kind of sounds like a fun episode. I still find it weird that Davy and Dora brought into this, but I figured Sullivan needed other young children, and these they were the story originally. So, Women of Importance, tension plagues the Pettibone household when Izzy invites her Aunt Lillian to visit. Kind of sounds like an interesting episode. Let's see. Ryan Gosling's in here. Probably very young. And so is Eugene Levy. and Diane West. There's a lot of guest stars in here. And there's a lot of guest stars in a lot of these. Moving on. So I'm guessing Diane West is Aunt Lillian. Secrets and Sacrifices. Janet and Alex have a secretive game of cat and mouse involving Janet's wedding ring. Now, why I did not watch this episode, I do vaguely remember it from my childhood. And essentially what happens is Alec finds a cutout of a magazine or a newspaper with a ring on one side, and he thinks Janet wants a new wedding ring. The reality is, if he flipped it over, he realized there was a recipe on the other side, and that's what was going on. But he borrows her wedding ring that she'd taken off to do dishes, which is where he found this. I think their anniversary is coming up, is what this is. It's an anniversary of her birthday, and she doesn't know. She's trying to find her wedding ring while he took it to get it sized. So that's what that's about. And then on to disc 3. Oh, Sweet Mystery Life. So Hetty and Tremaine, which I'm guessing is someone she's saying, get engaged, but neither are ready to put aside their careers. And obviously that doesn't happen because Hetty is still single. King and the Great White Way. Famous songwriters Rudy and Betty Blaine become determined to make Alex a star. Considering how old Alec is, considering pretty much all of his children are pretty much adults at this point, except for his youngest son. Total Eclipse. Felix takes a estranged guess from the White Sands that are in Avonlea for an eclipse, which is kind of fun when I'm filming this because there's an eclipse today. Again, this is April 8th, 2024. No, I'm not paying attention to it. I have a small child. I have stuff to do. Moving on. From Away. Davy helps two misbehaved orphans reunite with their older brother against Hetty's wishes. And then moving on to disc 4, so this is the last couple of episodes. Great Aunt Eliza confronts ghosts of her past when her ailing cousin Winifred visits. Return to Me. So this is the one that I did watch. Felicity retrieves a phone call that convinces her that Gus is alive and she must find him. So at this point, she's engaged. She's engaged to Stuart. I believe he proposes in Out of the Ashes. So her mother and her aunt Olivia are helping her fit her wedding dress, and a phone call comes in. It's long distance. It's from the Carolinas, and basically woman doesn't give her name. It's long distance, so it's very staticky. All this woman basically says is he needs you, something about a sailor boy, he can't live without you, and then hangs up. And basically they're able to get Sally Potts to find out that from the international operator that it came from the Carolinas. And Felicity is convinced it's Gus and he's alive. And she has to go. Her mother is having a hissy fit. Her family thinks she's nuts. Stuart's not particularly happy about this, but what can he do? And her Aunt Hetty decides to go with her. So they're going all the way from Prince Edward Island to the Carolinas, which is particularly back then, was a long trip. They have to take trains and multiple boats. They end up on one last ship and they meet where they're literally the only passengers was one elderly gentleman who's a native, and he kind of helps them out. They get there. Felicity actually helps out a young boy on the ship, and he basically, a bunch of bad luck. Apparently he was on the ship that Gus was, and he's like, there were survivors, and she tries to ask him about Gus, and he balks. So she knows something's up. They get to the place. They're looking around. They go to basically the hospital there, and she shows this picture, and a young African-American woman drops something behind her. Obviously something's up, and why the woman that she's talking to, who is another older African-American woman, pretty much says, nobody like that who's ever been here. And Felicity's still suspicious. And she sees this young African-American woman with the sailor, and she tries to chase after them, and then she's nearly assaulted. She's protected by the older gentleman who's kind of flirting with Hetty. And eventually they go walking with him, and they're walking past a church, and she sees the two women, and she's like, you got to tell me what's going on. And they finally said, fine, come with me. And they take her to their home, and there's Gus. He's blind. and he freaks. He does not want her there. He does not want Felicity there. She's like, what the heck? So the Southern gentleman goes and talks to him. It's like, she loves you. She came a long way to find you with very little information. You owe it to her to talk to her. So he goes, and they go and talk. They start kissing. He's blind. She doesn't seem to care. But then apparently she's back at the hotel, and Hetty asks what happened. She's like, he tells me to go back to my life. It's like he won't come home with me. So Hetty goes and yells at him. Remember, this is Gus's old school teacher. She's known him for years. She screams at him. She is fed up with his nonsense. She's like, I put a lot of time and effort into you for you to do this, for you to run away. You're pathetic. I don't care whether you live or die. You can drop dead right now, but you are hurting my niece. And shortly thereafter, she goes back to the hotel. Gus shows up, and he and Felicity talk. And he's like, I've seen so many things, and I will never see them again. And she's like, I don't care. You need to come home where people love you. And so that's essentially what happens. And he comes home, and that is how the episode ends. So, and then you have Last Hurrah, which is where basically Avonlea is being almost taken over by Carmody, and there's not a lot of, at the Dale Cannery collapses. So, and the last episode of the entire series is So Dear My Heart. So in this episode, Felicity finally tells Stuart, no, I'm not going to marry you, and he leaves town. She's like, she's in love with Gus. And Felix realizes that he's bored. He's the assistant at the White Sands, but he's bored. And so he ends up joining the Navy. So he joins the Navy. And Felicity's going to marry Gus. He does have surgery, thinking he can make him see again. And when he's basically lying there, it's very, very risky to go. This is going under, just going under for surgery. You could die. They go in, the surgery went well, he comes out while he's still kind of laying there, supposedly unconscious with Felicity sitting next to him. She proposes. She's like, whether you can see or not, I want to marry you. And he kind of says, obviously listening, if that's a proposal, I'll take it. So he is not really able to see. He can only pretty much see shadows. Felicity does not care. They are going to get married. And then there's, at this point, what's going on with Olivia is Jasper's been offered a teaching position off somewhere. And so they're leaving. And she wants to take her portion of the money from the cannery to do that. And in order to do that, it's owned between her, Hetty, it's the family trust. So it's obviously between her, Hetty, and Alec, their brother. And Alec agrees with Olivia. So Hetty's pissed off because her second little sister, one of them was obviously already dead because of Sarah, is going far away. And it's like her family's being pulled apart. And because of this, she refuses to come to Felicity's wedding. Sarah shows up last minute. She tries to get Hetty to come, then comes to see Felicity. And she's like, I was just there. I couldn't get her to come. Felicity refuses to get married. She walks all the way down the aisle. She's like, she's not here. Excuse me. She runs back to her aunt's and pretty much says, I will stand here until this wedding dress rots if you do not come. And then she drags her aunt to her wedding. And then she gets married. Because Hetty has to be there. Hetty comes in and sits next to Sarah. And then, of course, Gus gives his speech like, I can't see you, but this is our home. This is our family. And then Felix says to speak for the family, his aunt Hetty King, who basically has to stand up and give a speech. And basically it's like, even though our children are leaving, this will always be our home. And that's kind of how the series ends. With obviously the town coming together for Felicity and Gus's wedding and Hetty giving that speech. Kendra, I will let you out in a minute. So that's the end of this. Pick up a cat here. This is Kendra. Hi, girl. My old kitty cat. Okay. So that's really the end of the series. It is a very fun series. It's a very wholesome series. It does, again, it's historically somewhat accurate. Again, it's loosely based. Emphasis on the loosely. On 2 short story collections by Lucy Maud Montgomery, at least particularly the early first season, is based on the Chronicles of Avonlea and then the further Chronicles of Avonlea. And that's where a lot of the characters come from. They come from Lucy Maud Montgomery's short stories in Avonlea. And possibly some of her other short stories, because that's really where the Story Girl comes from. So that's another short story of hers. So it is a good series. You don't have to know the Anne of Green Gables series. You do not have to watch that to enjoy this series. It does not matter. That is how I viewed this. I watched this as a child. I did not read the books until I was an adult. I did not really, I remember watching the films a little bit, and then of course I watched the final, the continuing story, because that came out in 2000. Between the 80s and 2000, the first 2 films. Sullivan and films came out in the 80s, in the late 80s. The last one came out in 2000. That had to do with legal battles, the fun of legal battles. And obviously I think he got control of some of the short stories as well, and then most of everything else is original to him, except for, of course, him having some control over the characters. And then, of course, he created his own. So that is the end of the series, and episode 7, I will be concluding this you will be seeing this next Friday in another video. So if you like and subscribe, please be sure to like and subscribe. Leave a positive comment, and if you have one, look forward to more videos. We will be moving on to the Boxcar Children with a guest reviewer in my niece, Claire, who is 12 years old. And yes, I got this approved from her mother. I asked her mother first. We're not earning money off of this. My niece likes the Boxcar Children more than I do, because I'm having trouble reading them with getting slightly bored. And again, I have a 4-year-old, so I'm busy, and she's been wanting to do YouTube. So when it comes to those videos that she is on there, be rest assured that any comments will have to be approved by me to go public, because I'm strict enough. I'm even going to be more stricter with my niece. So she's going to be doing those just because she enjoys them. So, and this gives her a chance to do something. And by the time she's going to be doing these, my Boxcar Children videos are not due until school's out. And yes, this is Arizona. School gets out at the end of May, because hot, very, very hot. And then we start in the beginning of August. So again, be sure to like and subscribe, leave a positive comment if you have one. Check out the rest of my Avonlea videos. Check out the Titanic videos. They're coming out, and a whole bunch more incoming. Thank you.